Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Saturday afternoon, Brian Kelly, the LSU Tigers wrap up their spring game. And Dill, I think my first takeaway, Garrett Nussmeier, Heisman future ticket, has been acquired for the boys. But secondly, you look at that spring game and say, this offense has the capability of not only winning the SEC, but winning a national championship. And I think the conversation for this LSU program is, how well does this defense continue to come along heading into the 2024 season? And if this defense takes some steps in the right direction, we've been saying it all spring, this is going to be one of the more dangerous teams in college football. I want to get into some of our big takeaways, some players that really stood out. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. A massive shout out to the LSU Tiger fans. Y'all know we have a blast talking this program. The amount of support you guys continue to show to the boys truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, I'm going to give you the T-box here. What do we think of this LSU spring game?
Yeah, there was an element of confirming kind of what we mostly knew, and that was this offense is about as good as it comes. That offensive line, they're probably going to be the best in the country. That's a well-oiled machine. You saw how they just block their run schemes. They block them perfectly. They do it really consistently. And frankly, their twos do a really good job too. So I think this offense with those wide receivers and that offensive line and Nussmeier looking good, this is well equipped to be one of the better offenses. But you're right. It's going to be about getting this defense come together because frankly, you didn't see a ton of physical errors. Tackling wasn't necessarily great, I didn't think. But it's going to be about figuring out this scheme and being able to sit in your zones and not bust.
I agree. And that Brian Kelly kind of noted that, I should say, during the press conference. A lot of the problems on the LSU defensive side of the football from Saturday came with a lot of just blown coverage. It wasn't like, hey, our cornerbacks can't really run with these wide receivers, although you saw some hints at that. A lot more of the problems were just not playing. I don't want to say discipline, but I think it was more like, hey, we got a new defensive coordinator, completely new defensive coaching staff, a relatively young LSU secondary. That's kind of what you saw lead to some of those big plays. I think that's optimistic in terms of, hey, we clean up those coverage busts. This LSU defense can certainly take some steps. Now, I do want to focus on the offensive side of the football first. Brian Kelly noted this offense is still going to be very good. He even said it. I think we all know it. It's just going to look a little different, right? You don't have Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. He said the explosiveness is going to have to go first through the run game, which this run game is going to be excellent. You noted that offensive line is phenomenal, but then working off those explosive plays in that passing attack. And I think you saw the hints of that on Saturday afternoon.
When you saw some different things. Doing some of those like run extensions through their pass, getting Aaron Anderson involved in some of those screens, and obviously Harold Perkins makes some good plays on those. But like when you can get outflanked teams and use those athletic wideouts to again incorporate a little bit more lateral and then lateral parts of the offense and then take your shots over the top. I think you saw some of that going on yesterday. And again, as you mentioned, everything will work off that run game because if they can block the way they can. And Josh Williams, I thought, played really well. In fairness, I thought it was going to be the Caleb Jackson show. Caleb Jackson looked great, but I think you got two really good backs.
You got two running backs running behind such an elite offensive line. Dill, we noted it after the game. Like, it just seems so easy for this offensive line. Not only can you tell that most of those guys, pretty much all of those guys, are going to be on NFL rosters in the future, but more importantly, outside of DJ Chester at the center spot, this offensive line has played together for almost 3 years. And you can tell, everything is so smooth. This is really going to go through the offensive line. And then I think the beauty of this offense is, hey, we can run the football on just about anyone. Now we have some serious threats at the wide receiver position that can work that deeper third. And Garrett Nussmeier, 7 of 7, very efficient, hitting explosive plays. Pretty much everything you wanted to see from the offense. And I think before we move to the defense, it's worth noting that the LSU defense played okay when Garrett Nussmeier wasn't on the field. I don't know if that's necessarily a coincidence, but at the end of the day, it's hard to knock this LSU defense too much because you're going up against one of the best offenses that you see in the country.
No, and they're great. And that was something Brian Kelly did note. He noted that he wanted to see somebody emerge as that number 2. Yeah. Garrett Nussmeier is obviously the guy, no question about that. But you kind of could tell he wanted either A.J. Swan or Ricky Collins, somebody to kind of show that they are the clear number 2. I'm not necessarily sure you got that completely, But at the end of the day, I mean, kind of say it. If your starter goes down, it's hard to win a national championship. LSU, if Nussmeier stays healthy and everything kind of goes to plan on offense, it's obviously a national championship offense. It'll be about what we go to next. It'll be about this defense.
I mean, I'll knock on wood. Say Garrett Nussmeier beyond that offensive line, I feel pretty good about him not getting too beat up throughout the duration of the season. Now, going to the defense, I think Brian Kelly pretty much right off the bat noted we are going to address the interior of this defensive line. And I think you already saw that. You see him go. They're going after Philip Bleedy. They already got Gio Paz. You have Dominic McKinley coming in. It's definitely the biggest concern for this LSU defensive line. But I would say the positives, I thought you saw some good things from the edge rushers for this LSU team. Obviously, early enrollee Gabriel Relaford, a guy that we covered when he committed to LSU. Though I am optimistic about this edge rushing group being pretty solid in 2024, I think.
That was probably the takeaway from that defensive line is those defensive ends, they play pretty physical. I thought Parashan looked really good. I thought he took some steps that you wanted to see. And frankly, you look at some of those younger guys in Womack and Relaford, you got some interesting potential in being a better pass rushing unit because that was one of the big issues last year. Their defensive ends were just they all kind of I felt like played the same way, big physical power defensive ends, but they didn't have those guys who are really good on the edge in terms of working on the edge of tackles. And I think you do see Gabriel Relaford, especially, I mean, really explosive for a young guy.
He's got some burst to him.
And Deshaun Womack, I think we're all waiting because he just looks like the guy you want to see at defensive end. Long, athletic, lean. I mean, I think he played good too. So you got two good edge rushers who I think can be more of those sack producers and impact players than maybe what you had last year.
And that'll take some pressure off the second. We kind of have this conversation of, all right, we have some question marks about a young secondary. If you can have an elite pass rush, that takes a lot of pressure off the secondary. So I'm kind of interested to see if LSU can cultivate a front seven. I'm just going to say front seven because we know Harold Perkins is going to be involved in the pass rush. Can this become a really good unit and take some pressure off the back end? Linebackers, Harold Perkins, I think you're really starting to see him get comfortable in that off-ball spot. Didn't think we saw the best game out of Greg Penn. We've seen a lot of Greg Penn. I'm not too concerned about Greg Penn. I don't think it was his best game. I want to dig into the secondary deal. I took some heat in the comments section a couple of days ago when we were talking about LSU transfer portal targets, saying I think they could benefit from adding some guys in the back end. And I get from a number standpoint, it's a really loaded group, but I do think that you saw on Saturday that this is still an LSU secondary that, yes, you're getting some guys back from injury, and I think that'll make this group better. I think they'll get better as they get more accustomed to Blake Baker's defense, but you still got some youth. And I think that you have such a good offense heading into 2024. If there's an opportunity to go grab someone in the back end, especially at the cornerback spot, that you feel good about, I think I'm taking that if I'm Brian Kelly and LSU.
And that'll be an interesting conversation because, frankly, I thought Ashton Stamps and PJ played really good. I think PJ Woodland.
Gamer.
But he came out of nowhere. I mean, didn't look necessarily like a college athlete yet. Looked a little on the small side.
Yes.
Being able to track guys and being able to move with them and shadow. I thought those two, frankly, both played really good man coverage for the most part. I think, again, what you saw the breakdowns were holes in zones and not following guys or letting some of those vertical routes, not carrying them through. I mean, that stuff kind of does seem like it gets corrected, especially as coordinators or when you bring in that new coordinator, things break down at times. I mean, just guys practicing a new scheme and learning it. Again, as the season goes on, I think their offense can carry them forward for most of their season. But as it gets deeper, if they can just kind of tighten up and tighten the screws on what they do on defense, I think they do have the talent, especially at the cornerback spot. And as you kind of bring Zy Alexander back, I think you have guys who can cover the way you need to cover. I think the interesting spot will be safety. I really like Major Burns, but other than him, I think you probably use one more. Possibly.
Yeah, we'll see. I think we'll get a sense. Know who has the best sense of whether LSU needs to add in the secondary or not? It's Brian Kelly and Blake Baker. So if you see them get aggressive, okay, then we needed to get aggressive. If you don't see them go out and grab guys, that's them saying, hey, we feel pretty good about the development of the guys that we have in this locker room. I'll second you on PJ Woodland. And he's a guy that came into LSU at 153 pounds. I think Brian Kelly said he's up to 168. If you can get another 10, 15 pounds on him, you said it, the movement skills, the ability to be sticky, it's certainly there. That's a very encouraging performance from somebody like him. I'm really interested to see how this secondary plays out. And Dill, it's a proven commodity with Blake Baker. Like, you go back to what he did at Missouri and how he developed those young guys. If he can do that with LSU, a probably more talented secondary than you had at Missouri, and you're looking at a team that is going to be extremely dangerous in 2024. We'll close it out on this. I'm really excited to see what LSU does in the next couple weeks in the transfer portal. I truly think that this team is really just a couple pieces away from being extremely dangerous in 2024. No questions about the offense. A couple of guys add to this defense, and this is going to be a really fun team in 2024. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.